Hey everyone, this is Christian jumping in real quick to let you know this is Tell Us About Yourself episode number 100. We are incredibly proud of that. I'm particularly proud from a creative standpoint because, if I'm being honest, I've never created 100 of anything. And so to be able to make it to this milestone is a significant personal achievement for me, but I also realize that there are so many people that are factors in the success of this project that are instrumental in its success and it being able to make it to 100 episodes. First of all, everyone at the Straw Museum, Chris, Shane, Howard, Bob, everyone who gave the clearance for me to use the name of the museum to, as a guest said a couple weeks ago, lend this project some legitimacy. Thank you so much. You didn't have to do that, but you did. Thank you. Cory Anotado, my co-executive producer, partner in crime, uploads all the episodes each week, keeps track of all the numbers on the back end so that I don't have to. You're a wizard. I tell everyone the same thing. Thank you so much. Chuck Donegan, Jeremy Nelson, everyone else who's helped me with research for this show, helped me find guests, helped me find video footage, things that I don't know that I would be able to produce this show without. Thank you so much. Everyone at BuzzerBlog, everyone who listens, everyone who sends me comments about the episodes, who downloads the thing, everyone who participates in the consumption of this show. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. And that includes you listening right now. I am so appreciative that you took the time to click play, to click download, whatever it is that you do to get this show. I don't know how else to say it. Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Tell us about yourself, would you?
Tell us something about you.
For any new viewers, why don't you tell us again about yourself?
We've met before, but let's meet again. Tell us about yourself.
What else can you tell us about yourself?
Perhaps you'd fill us in again and tell us about yourself.
Hello, I'm Mark L Walberg, and welcome to a special edition of Tell Us About Yourself. Our guest this week is Rossi Morreale, game show host, actor, producer, and casting consultant with dozens of credits to his name. Game show fans may remember him as the host of Junkyard Wars and Temptation, the New Sale of the Century. And tonight he sits down with Christian Carrion to talk about a career that's taken him from his hometown of Fort Smith, Arkansas, all the way to Hollywood, California. Christian, take it away.
My name is Rossi Morreale. I'm from Fort Smith, Arkansas, and I'm a TV host.
It's a pleasure for me to talk to you because I loved your show when it was on. I loved Temptation. I grew up loving game shows. I still love them to this day. And Temptation was the first show I watched on a regular basis, during which I had the idea in my head that if I watch this enough, it will stay on the air. If I like it, I should watch it. And so I tried to watch it as often as possible, and it was very enjoyable. So it is a joy for me to be able to talk to you today.
Man, I wish that was the case, Christian, because I feel like you could have kept us on air for a long time.
But I know it. That's all right.
The bureaucracy.
That's right. That's all. Everything happens for a reason, I guess.
It was an amazing experience for me, I will tell you. And I appreciate you enjoying that. You know, it's funny because it still does air, oddly enough. I see it on Buzzer now randomly. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, right? Like, look at that suit. Look at that hair, right? It's like, it's a version of me 15 years ago, which is just funny.
Yeah, and 15 years doesn't seem like a whole lot of time, but yeah, even if you look at a show from like 2006, 2007, the fashions are different. They talk about, that's like, you know, one of the joys of watching old game shows is that you could see how the outfits have changed, how the fashion sense has changed. And it's even true, I think, for the early 2000s. There's a definite difference.
But see, that's what's funny. I am a huge game show fanatic. I love game shows. There was nothing better when I was growing up, elementary school, and watching game shows. Press Your Luck, Card Sharks, the Bumper Stumpers. Obviously The Price is Right. I used to watch, but that was in the 80s, right? So you're talking to me about in like 2007. I'm thinking like, I'm not an old game show host. I liked old game shows, but in fact now I'm an old game show host.
Is that ever a trip to see yourself on a rerun at like 3 a.m. on Buzzer?
I literally go and wake my children up and have them, because I have to like prove to them I used to do all this random stuff. The worst part, the weirdest and worst part about like a lot of my early TV career, and even into like a show that I had in 2010, 2011, all those shows were still like 4x3 box and not HD. Like they weren't even shot in 16:9, Christian. And again, I try to convince myself like, no, like I've done, like my stuff's not that old. It is that old. It's so old it doesn't fit on the TV screen that we have now. That is very common. So
it's a square, right?
It's a square. It was shot in 4x3. So I show my kids episodes and they're like, and it looks, when you see it now, right? Because a high quality show back on a tube TV in 4x3 looked great on a tube TV, but when you put it on an HD TV in 16:9 in 80 inches, it looks like it was shot in the 1980s. So my kids are like, wait, when was this? I'm like, it was literally 12 years ago. Like it was 12 years ago.
That's such a trip. And like we're in this era now where a lot of the old game shows are coming back on streaming. So like The Price is Right has a 24-hour channel where you can watch the old Price is Right, any time of day. And so they digitized all the master tapes from, the 70s, the 80s. And you realize that they were never prepared for HD because you watch these newly converted or newly digitized tapes and you can see the tape holding things together on set. You can see the brush strokes where maybe some paint got chipped on a set piece and they had to repaint it. You could see all those details. To me, that's such a trip that they were never ready for that. And seeing all those little details, I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, the better the quality, all the old TV and movie tricks and set tricks go away. Like you have to be perfect. And the fact is, most of these sets were done as cheaply as possible to keep expenses down.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the joy of producing game shows, right? They're so much less, they're so much cheaper than doing, a scripted series or something. It's part of the magic, I guess. When you see game shows, like I went to see The Price is Right when I turned 18. That was like the first game show I was on. And just seeing how bare bones everything was in person, but how beautiful it looks on TV, that was a game changer for me. I had never really made that connection before.
Yeah, it's always amazing like how much smaller the sets are when you're actually on them, how much the games that you're like, oh my gosh, that must be the most like epic game. Like it's got to be built strong, and you get there, it's like foam and cardboard. And if you ever walk around the back of some of those games and The Price is Right, and even like the Jeopardy wall is like I'm behind the Wizard of Oz's curtain now, and you're just like
Right, it's unbelievable, but to me it's part of why I love TV. It's magic in its own way,
Yeah, I still have a stack of VHS tapes of old episodes of Temptation that I still am like I have them in my office to convert them. I have a VCR to DVD burner so that I can convert my own VHS tapes of my TV shows to a DVD so that my kids can see them. And the funny part is I still have to go find a DVD player to play them if I ever want to show my kids what I used to do growing up.
It's unbelievable. Rossi, as a person looking to make their way in show business, how would you describe the appeal of the job of game show host? Like if we strip away all like the romanticism and like that thrill of giving away money that game show fans seem to always primarily think about, what are the benefits of a job like that compared to another job in entertainment?
The best part about, well, number one, being a game show host is the number one top show hosting position I've ever had in my entire life. I've hosted, I think, 50 some odd shows at this time, national. I've been on every cable network. I've been on 3 different actual, like networks. I've had primetime shows, and being a game show host was by far the greatest and most fun experience of my life. Because I grew up loving game shows and not even really connecting the dots that was an actual job. No, my high school counselor never brought up game show host.
Right.
And that definitely wasn't a major in college. Right. So
Sure.
Achieving that goal and getting that point was an absolute dream come true that I didn't even know I had.
It's so good to hear that, because that was always, I think I have this in common with a lot of people who listen to the show. Like, I have always wanted to be a game show host. Like, that's been the lifelong dream. And like, I got older and I realized that that same satisfaction can be found in other areas. And I realized that it's only so many people that get to be a game show host. That's a very lucky few people that get to do it, and not only do it, but get to do it on a classic show. I mean, there is, I can count on one hand, I think, the number of, classic career game show hosts there were that got job after job.
Well, see, and that's the problem. You don't realize that when you're watching it. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm a game show host. So like, now I'll be a game show host. And the fact is, and what I was gonna, the following answer up to this, the best part of being a game show host versus any other hosting job or even TV job, we shot 173 episodes in 27 days.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
We did 6 episodes a day. Now, we didn't do them in 27 days straight. There were some off days in between, and right, but it ended up being probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months, if I'm remembering correctly. But of our shooting days, we did 172 episodes in 26 days, and it was 6 episodes a day. I mean, you can do the math. But we shot 6 episodes a day. Like, all these contestants would come in, and we'd shoot it. Someone would win, and then we would move on. And if on that day someone won 2 or 3 or 4 episodes in a row and became the returning champion, great. If not, then that was it. And that was it, man. So in the big scheme of things, like, if you did have a dialed-in job like, Price is Right or Scrabble or Wheel of Fortune, you don't go to work every day. You shoot your entire year in like 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, and you're done for the year.
That is a benefit for sure. That is a perk.
So if you had a game show, like, let's just say that game show took off, right? And let's say I get to the point where I'm being paid, and again, I'm making up numbers here, but let's just say it's $5,000 an episode, right? Which is very low.
Right.
For an episode. Again, for an ongoing season, right? I didn't get paid that my first season because it was the first season, right? And so you're under a SAG contract. So you're under a SAG. What is a SAG weekly, which ends up being a certain amount for that week of when it airs. It's not of like, oh, we shot 36 episodes in a week, so you only get paid for the week. You get paid for how and when it airs. So this was a SAG contract 15 years ago, weekly, that was whatever, a couple $1,000 for the 5 shows. But let's just say you get to a point where you have like a 2 or 3, you're in year 5, 6, and so you're making, let's just call it, $5,000 per episode. So you're doing a $25,000 a week deal, and you're doing 170 something episodes for 52 weeks. I mean, so you're making whatever, a couple of $1 million in a month, 6 weeks, and you don't need another job. Like, if that's all you do, you literally work for let's call it 2 months a year, and you make a couple $1 million, and then you have the rest of the time to do whatever.
Wow. And you don't get bored. Like, you wouldn't get bored in that time.
Oh my gosh. Well, no, because you're always going to be, like, if you're in the industry, you're always working on something else. You're trying to build your own thing. You've always got your own pet project, and that might be another show. It might be a movie. You might be an artist. You might be, some people have their own band. So it gives you the freedom of time because you make a lot of money in a short amount of time, and then it gives you the freedom of time to put into other things. Now, here's what the downfall of TV and movie stars, right? You can put your time and energy into positive things, right? Or you can just party it up in drugs and alcohol, right? I mean,
Sure.
how many times have you seen it? But that's the deal. You make a ton of money in a short amount of time, and then you have the freedom of time. Depending on who you are and what kind of person you are and what you put your time and energy into, that's going to dictate what the direction of your life.
Right. Yeah, that's
easy to get bored, fill it with parties and women and whatever, right? Especially if you're now, listen, not for a game show host. I mean, it's not like a game show host has all the popularity in the world, but you can see how quickly this could be like, oh man, I have all the time in the world and I'm super famous. And I didn't make a couple $1 million. I made $30 million shooting this movie in 2 months. Now I'm rich and famous and I have the freedom of time. What am I going to do with it? Well,
right. Do you ever, how do I ask this? I've heard conversations about the TV industry where someone will invoke a phrase similar to like, don't do that. You'll end up being a game show host. And I think that is so unfortunate because not only does it seem like the coolest job in the world from hearing people like you describe it, it just looks like the coolest job in the world. Isn't it sort of unfortunate that the role of game show host, even today, still has a little bit of that stigma attached to it? Like, why wouldn't everyone want to do this?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think back in the day, it was right. Movie people never wanted to be in anything but movies. And if they ever got, on an episodic TV show, that was under their career. And then episodic movie people that are in primetime shows, like they never wanted to be on a soap opera, right? So it's like, so everyone has their own, I think I'm cooler than you are. I would say, that definitely was a thing. Like, oh, you're on in daytime, right? Like, oh, you poor thing. But I mean, I guess that depends who you are and what you want to be, right? If being a game show host is your dream and you accomplish that dream, then it's as good, if not better, than being a movie star, right? If that's how you feel about it. And especially these days, I mean, let's look at it. Now every single game show is hosted by an A-list celebrity. Like all the A-list, Jamie Foxx, go down the list. All the A-list celebrities now are trying to be game show hosts. So I would say that is not the case today because I keep losing television shows to A-list celebrities, which was not the problem in the early 2000s. They just won a TV host was a TV host, right? And a movie star was a movie star. Well, now movie stars they want to become game show hosts, and so it's like kind of a bummer for us game show hosts, honestly.
Yeah, and as somebody who is involved in the casting aspect of TV and movies and things, I'm sure you have a firsthand view or a front row seat to that shift in dynamic where all of a sudden there are no more career game show hosts. You have to be someone who has an already established fan base. People have to know your name already before you get the opportunity to host a game show, which is, again, unfortunate because I think that there's probably a lot of talent out there that might not be immediately recognizable, but if you put them in that environment, they would shine.
Right. I mean, 100%. I would say probably the majority of the world's most talented people are some of the greatest waitresses and waiters in and around LA. I mean, and that's the fact of it. You have to get a break. You have to get lucky. You have to get. There's no. If you do this, you'll make it across the board. And now you see how the TV and movie industry is, and studios are failing left and right. I mean, nobody wants to take a risk. Nobody wants to try something new. Nobody wants to build a new brand, right? Everything's got to be. It's got to have some old. It's hilarious, right? I've got kids. I've got two little girls, and like just the other day, I walked in. I was like, "Oh, what are you guys watching?" I was like, "Is that a new cartoon?" They're like, "Yeah, it's a new movie. It just came out." I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" And they're like, "It's called Garfield." And I'm like, "What?" They're like, "Yeah, it's this new movie called Garfield." And I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me? But and this is what's hilarious. In probably the past, since this summer, my kids have started watching Transformers. They started watching the Smurfs. They've started watching DuckTales. They've started watching now Garfield. These are all shows I watched as a kid that have now been completely redone. She-Ra just came out. They watch She-Ra now. These are all things that were around when I was a child at this exact same age as my kids right now. And now that's what they're watching because executives and whatever, they're scared to death to start something new. So it's got to have an IP address. And it's a funny thing is it doesn't even matter. Like, that new movie, not new, but I just recently watched it on an airplane, Battleship. Like that was a movie based on the board game Battleship. Like, what?
Right.
That's crazy. I was just gone this weekend. I watched Battleship and then I watched that movie Fall Guy, right? With it's got a bunch of celebrities in it.
Right.
It's Ryan Gosling. It's a funny movie, but that's based on the TV show The Fall Guy that I watched. It was like The Fall Guy, A-Team, all those shows, Equalizer, those were all Airwolf, those were all on around the same time. And Fall Guy was one of those TV shows. And like that, like even now a Ryan Gosling movie even has to have some sort of old IP address that people can connect something to so that some producer or some executive isn't put his neck out with this new brand of entertainment or trying to build it's their own thing.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about Temptation. So this was a revival of a show called Sale of the Century that I grew up watching in reruns on like the USA Network. I had fond memories of it. And so when I heard it was coming back, I was super excited for it. How did that opportunity materialize for you? How did you get let in on the opportunity to audition and do a pilot? Like, how did that happen for you?
So at the time it was, 2007, 2008, somewhere around in there. And back then, I probably booked 80% of the shows that I went out on an audition for. TV hosts were this kind of like newly created thing that were coming up through all these big reality shows in kind of the early 2000s when reality shows were kind of beginning, like right when it would start off with like The Bachelor and Survivor and these kind of like prime time reality shows, and then all of a sudden it's like they just took off, right? And they took off on every network, from Food Network, TLC. I mean, it was E Entertainment. It didn't. Every network was now finding these reality style shows, cooking shows, building shows, competitive shows. And that's kind of when I moved to LA, and I came here on vacation in 2000, never left, and just kind of stumbled into Junkyard Wars, and that's the show I started doing on TLC first. And then you just kind of make a name for yourself, right? And then you just keep doing shows, and then you keep working with certain production companies, and you work with certain networks. And Fremantle was someone I had gone in on a couple of different auditions on. And so they were kind of aware of me, and it was there was, again, they do a lot of shows. Went on a couple of there was a couple like back in kind of like after the season American Idol shows that I was up for with them. I had gone in for another show called American Band or America's Greatest Band or something like that. And I came down to me and the last one other guy, and then like a British guy ended up getting it, which is hilarious. It's like the Great American Band, and like a British guy hosts it.
Right.
Like,
the era of American Idol, I guess.
Yeah, right. It was like, okay. And so they just kept bringing me in for stuff. I just kept going in for shows with Fremantle. And I did I went to the audition and kind of deal, right? You did the they'd make you do the speed questions, and then they'd make you just kind of do other, just some other stuff to see how you could kind of like work a room. They'd bring two contestants in, fake contestants, and they were usually executives in like a boardroom, and you would make up questions and make up a speed round for them. They just wanted to see like how quick were you on your feet? What could you come up with? Right? They'd maybe give you some lines or some things, but you kind of walked in blind, and they're like, all right, jump up there real quick. let's like just make up like 3 or 4 questions, ask the question that you come up with, pretend like one of the contestants buzzed in on something, call on that contestant, let them answer, tell them if it's right or wrong, and then ask the next question, right? So you'd be like, oh, okay. So you obviously try to come up with quick questions and be like, okay, all right, okay, great. Again, on the spot, right? This isn't prepped. This is like there's like 8 executives sitting on this table. They throw two of their assistants up there, and now you're sitting across the table. So you jump up from the seat and you're like, okay, well, let me get my thing going. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like improv.
100%. And like, that's it, right? If you're a game show host, you're kind of a game show host. I mean, I've never met a game show host that was like boring in real life. We just seem to be game show hosts. Like when we're in a crowd or we're in public or we're in a group, we're the guy, right? We're the one, the big personality, the fun, the energy. Like we're the type of people that gain energy from other people, right? We like to be, typically it's that extrovert, type A. I'm sure someone would be like, well, I wasn't that if we went down all the game shows. But for the most part, because you have to like people, you have to have a level of energy, right? You're going to do 5 or 6 episodes a day. So like you've got to have this level of energy that just is natural.
Right. There is a type for sure. Yep.
Yeah, so you jump up and you're like, okay, hey, Christian, hey, Donna, Christian and Donna here on Sale of the Century. I'm Rossi Morreale. We're going to jump right into the speed round. All right, here we go. First question is, who's the president of the United States? Christian. No. And you're just like making up things up. You're just like creating this world that doesn't even exist, and you either do it well or you don't do it well. And they probably brought me back probably, I want to say 3 different times to where I had to kind of do that kind of stuff. The first audition, I remember being a little bit less. It was more come in on camera, one casting guy, kind of read the lines. They would give you a little bit more. But as you moved up, then it was like they were just pushing you to see like who you were, how you were going to be, because you shoot game shows live. You don't shoot them live, but you shoot them live to tape.
Sure.
So, like, I mean, we got to the point, like, when I got into a rhythm, I could do an entire episode of the show in time, in 22 minutes, right? A 30-minute show is 22 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's with some of the, so I think I got to the point where I was like doing every episode I was doing in under 20 minutes, where we were literally shooting the show in 25 minutes, 20 to 25 minutes or less, the entire episode. Because I was just dialed in. I'd walk out, I'd do the intro, I'd run over, they'd cut, switch, action. We'd start the show. We'd go through the speed round. Done. Okay, great. Let's move to the fame game. Let's go to the fame game. We do the fame game. Cut. All right, we've got here's the deal of the day. Deal of the day. I would go in. I would do it. I would work them. I would try to sell them. I would offer, keep offering. Sold. Great. And and we would just, it was like clockwork.
Yeah. Well, that's a great skill set for a game show host to have. And I think a lot of I think of Bob Barker in particular. They used to talk about how he had a clock in his head. He could tell when the show was running long or when he had a few minutes to kind of play around, and he would always bring it in on time. That's a great skill to develop, and probably doing 6 shows a day, it's almost by force you have to develop that.
Well, 100%, but I would say that's just genuinely something I have naturally. Like it was like, I was like, oh man, this is cool. Like I'm a game show host. And then I did the first episode and I was like, actually, I am a game show host. I just now have a job running a game show, right? There was a part of me that just very naturally, right now I host a TV show that's a competition show, and I do a lot of competition shows. And once people work with me, they're like, man, you save us so much time and money by the way your brain works, by the way you kind of like can carry on the game and then regurgitate it in like one take. Because most hosts, right, when you bring on these influencers or whatever, like there are some of them are maybe good, but when you have a true host hosting a show, They don't need separate times to do their pickups. They don't need the single one camera without the contestants to do their lines to get it right. We just don't need that. Like, I know what the game is. I know what's happening. I know what's at stake. I know what the prizes are. I know what's happened and I know what's about to happen. And I can regurgitate it in a way that the audience understands it. The contestants know what's happening. You get all the shots you need. I'll do it one more time so you can get a close up on me and a close up on contestants. And then let's move on.
So if it wasn't the practice of doing it over and over and over when you were recording Temptation, where does that skill come from? How far back in your life does that go?
I mean, back in high school, elementary school, I was always the kid, right? That I had the solo during the play or the spring concert, right? I was always doing something. In high school, we had talent shows, and I always ended up being the host of the talent show, and then doing skits and stuff like that. So there's something about me where I just genuinely like people. I mean, I could give you 100 stories of me just being at a party and then creating some sort of game or some sort of fun thing for the people at the party, like through college into my 20s. I can tell you times that just being at a bar, a sports bar, someone's like, "Hey, we're doing this challenge." I'm like, boom. Not only do I do the challenge, like I made the challenge better, and built it. I was literally just in Chicago this week with my dad. We went to a Chicago Bears game and they had keg bowling there, just like in one of the tailgates. It's free that like around the stadium. And I got involved in the keg tailgate. Next thing you know, I was on the microphone with the guy. I'm getting the crowd into it, right? It's just, I'm 47 years old, and I'm with my 72-year-old dad. But like, it's just what I do. Right. And like have a natural instinct and knack and desire to like, how can I make this more fun? How can I help these people have more fun? How can I put a smile on this group's face? Oh, those people don't look like they're having fun. I should go over there and do something to help them have more fun.
Yeah, and you bring that sensibility into a game show host audition, and you're like a shoo-in, right?
Well, you would hope, but now
you're right. Theoretically, sure.
Now it's numbers. Right now it's a numbers game.
When you were getting ready to take the role on Temptation, once you got the job, I know that the show had a lot of influence from the Australian version of the show, because Sale of the Century was super popular in Australia for like decades. Did you personally have any interplay with the people in Australia? Did you go see the show there? Did they give you any advice? Like, how did that, like, was there a relationship there?
So when they got the show greenlit, so Fremantle has the property, right? They own the property. And so they decide, all right, we're going to do this new show. And so they go to, whatever. I think it ended up being syndicated mostly on Fox, and they're like, hey, so Fox and My 13. But anyway, so when they go to sell it to the network, they have to sell it. We had to shoot a pilot. So instead of building a set and spend all this money here to shoot the pilot, we flew to Australia, flew to Melbourne, spent the week on the set of Temptation in Melbourne, which in Melbourne, it's a primetime show. It's huge,
right,
over there. They did a couple things different, but basically we took what ends up being the American version of Temptation. We went over there to their set, brought 3 American contestants, or found 3 American contestants over there, right? So it felt like it was shot here, and obviously not a problem finding Americans in Australia, and we shot the pilot there. So I got to spend time with both the hosts, and there was 2 hosts there, a male and female, and then they had their prize lady she was like a big deal, like she did every prize all the time. So like I got to spend the week with them, got a few tips, got to get some understanding on how to do speed rounds, how to speak very clearly in a right, because you have to get that question out one time. You can't repeat it, right? It's a speed round, so it has to be done well. How to not get jumbled up on that, how to make notes on the cards on kind of what words to focus on and what words to hit. So if they didn't hear every word, they heard the key words so they could answer the question, right?
Right. Sure.
So like, if you're going to say like, who's the president of the United States, you got to hit president in the United States. Their brain will catch on to like, who is the, you know what I mean? So it's like, who's the president of the United States? And so it's like, you hit the, and then your brain hears president of the United States. Oh, boom, Joe Biden, right? So you just, whatever it is. And so you because if you hit like, who is the president of the United States? They're like, who, what? Like your brain hears that big, whatever word you put the emphasis on, that's what the brain focuses on.
Yeah, you're like highlighting the relevant info.
Right. So you can't just, you can't focus on who, because they're like, they hear who really big, and then they're like, wait, president of the United States, and then someone else is already probably buzzed in. So you hit the keywords. So stuff like that was great. And then I got to watch them do their version, which again, a little bit different, but just the way they moved in and out of like the fame game or knockoff and played with a little bit, how they would sometimes like someone would give an answer. Oh, I'm gonna go with whatever. Jimmy on this. Oh, Jimmy. Now why Jimmy? Why'd you go with that answer? Right. These kind of like little follow-up questions if you needed to drag the time out a little bit more, right? Or if you felt like it was going too short because it was moving along too quick. Because that's the thing with game shows, right? If you go into like the fame game and the first 3 answers are wrong, well, you've set aside like 8 minutes for that segment, and now it's done in 2. Now you got 5 minutes to make up, right? So stuff like that is, especially on a game show, if people like lose a lot on the show, you have to make up that time, because you have to set enough time that if they clear the board, how long is that going to take? Right.
So you have to come with all that stuff in your pocket, because game shows are unpredictable. You don't know if somebody's going to flame out on the first question, or if the whole round is going to take up until, you hear the time is up.
Right. Same thing with knockoff, right? The final round, that's a big, long, drawn out final game. So if someone just like collapses the first one is wrong or whatever, you have to be able to think on your feet and make up that time, right? I mean, that's kind of where I look back on those auditions and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like they put me on the spot as much and made me uncomfortable as much as they possibly could to see how I handled it. And that stuff doesn't bother me, right? I love that stuff. So it works. I'm sure there were some other people that they liked their look or their voice or their charisma, but then they got into that section of the audition and they just fell apart.
Right. That takes Sale of the Century, just as a format, takes such a talented host, and talented in so many ways. And one of the things I think about that differentiates that role from the role of host on other shows is that idea that you have that opportunity to break the fourth wall. So you introduce an instant bargain to one of the contestants, and they're thinking about whether they want to buy it or not, because they're using their money that they won during the game and potentially giving up their lead to buy something that you're offering them in the middle of the game. And you have that opportunity, almost like Monty Hall. You get to kind of walk up to them and offer them some money and, coerce them to take that risk. That, to me, is such a unique aspect of that particular role that you don't get on many other game shows. How did you prepare for that specific part of your job as host on Temptation?
Well, you definitely we would go through a lot of rehearsals and stuff like that. So they would put like a couple producers or the makeup lady or a couple different grips or something like that. And we would kind of run through that stuff. But I would tell you, like, that's what I love the most about that show, because what I'm really good at, even to this day, and kind of always have been, whether it's in my personal life, whether it's been as a TV host, and I do a lot of charity events, I'm an auctioneer, I do a lot of live events, is I'm really good with people. Number one, I genuinely like people. I think people have the best stories. I love to get to know people. I love to hear what people are all about and why they make the decisions that they make. And so I'm genuinely interested in people. So, there's so many game shows, like you said, that the whole time you're just playing the game, right? That's it. You're not really engaging the contestants. It's the contestants are playing the game. You're setting the game up for the contestants, and there's minimal crossover into you having a moment with that contestant. And that's what I loved about it. I love the instant bargains, right? I love those deals of the day where we got to come in and talk to them and go up close to them and, feed them chocolate. I mean, I remember feeding women chocolate strawberries, trying to get them to, or, oh, here, rub this blanket or this robe on your face. Feel how soft it is, like having those fun moments. And being able to kind of like play with and manipulate a little bit, but like again in a positive way, like, come on, you got to do this, right? Or be able to change the price or pull cash out of my pocket and just lay it like right there in front of them. This is only going to cost you $3. Here's $500 cash, or just be like, how about $100? Like, no, I don't want to. How about $200? Like, no, okay, $500, and you're just taunting these poor people, right? But again, in a fun environment, in an exciting, I'm giving to you. How much can I give to you until it breaks you to want to spend this money from that you've won on the game show? And that was that again. I think again something that's a little bit natural to me. Something's a little bit natural to the Bob Barkers and you look at oh gosh, I just went blank. The guy who does Family Feud now.
Steve Harvey.
Steve Harvey, right? I
Right.
mean, like, this is not something Steve Harvey learned, right? He's probably honed it in a little bit. He's probably learned a few tips and tricks. But the way Steve Harvey is with his contestants is the way Steve Harvey is. And I honest to God, like, I mean, that's me. Like, that's me in a nutshell. If you ever met me and saw me just in public and watched me, I talk to everyone around me. I compliment people. I create opportunities to just joke and laugh and have fun. I walk my kids to school and I talk to parents and joke around and make comments and create little circles of fun and conversation. And it's just a thing I do, right? And so a lot of it I think carries over. The one thing I had to learn in the game show realm is how to keep it like concise. As you can imagine, I'm pretty long-winded in some capacity, but
No, not at all. I'm enjoying it. That's part of what I enjoy about talking with you. To be honest with you, Rossi, like I pick up on your energy, and I can imagine that in a broadcast setting, in a studio setting, the people around you can depend on you for that energy. Like you're going to keep that machine moving just because of the way you engage with people. That encourages them to engage in the same way. Now you have two engaging, excitable people talking to each other. You know what I mean? Like you have a show right there.
100%, 100%. And I've been, I mean, that's been my energy has been my life force in the TV world. From the get-go. And unfortunately, these days, right now at this point, that's not enough for some of the bigger shows because you have to have the following, which is what, it is whatever, it is what it is. But I've been on, I still do random things with different producers and they're just like, oh my gosh, like, and everyone has a horror story, right? They wanted to work with this host, celebrity person, and like, they don't have that energy, right? And so the funny thing is when the host walks on set, the host either fills that stage with energy or sucks the life right out of it. Right. I mean, I've seen it in person when the host or the main talent is having a bad day and just sucks the life out of the whole room. The cameraman, you've got the stage hands and the stage director trying to keep the energy up, and the contestant person's working with the contestants, and the poor MC is just like sucking the MC out of the life out of everything. And you're just like, man, how did that person get this job? Right? Like, and then you can make anybody look good with enough takes, right? But
yeah, sure.
Some people just do it naturally. You grew up watching the game shows. You're like, Chuck Woolery is Chuck Woolery when you meet him. He is. He's Chuck Woolery. Bob Barker the same way. Obviously when he was still doing what he did so well. Like these guys had a certain level of energy that was just inescapable.
Yeah, you can't turn it on and off. And if you can, I think audiences will pick up on it because I think TV audiences are really attuned to who's genuine and who isn't. They can tell. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's not like Steve Harvey's really an introvert that just like, sits in his trailer all day. I mean, you can imagine the antics this guy has on set, the fun he's having. He's probably talking to the audience. He wants people to experience life. He wants them to have a good experience when they come into his world on his set. And that's something that's a natural thing. That's you kind of either have that, or you think you're a big deal, and you think you're the important part of this, and we're not. Right? We're not. It's the contestants, it's the audience. I mean, these are the people that this is all about. It's not about me. I'm the fortunate one, right? I was and am always just grateful that I'm there. And now my job is to make sure that the people that are here have a good time and leave with a good story and enjoy their time on a game show.
One of the most challenging things, I think, in the world of game shows, to the degree to which I know it, is to take a classic show and reboot it for a modern audience, revive it for a current audience. Because I think that it's difficult to toe the line between breathing new life into a format, making it completely new, but still in the vein of the original, or just bringing back the old show. And I think in this particular fandom, there are many, many people who complain about anything that seems even remotely new. And I think that's for many reasons. But what do you wish viewers knew or understood about the effort to bring back a classic show, a show that maybe the audience already has a preconceived notion or expectation about?
Well, I think the biggest problem these days, and especially bringing in a new audience, is, it started with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. As soon as you started giving $1 million as prize money, game shows ceased to be as fun when you were winning, at best, a new car, right? Or $10,000. Like that, just the stakes weren't there. And so, we grew up in a world where if you want a new car, that was it. $100,000 pyramid. What? 100,000, right? This is exciting, right? The $100,000 pyramid was exciting back then, not because of the show itself, it's because they had a chance to win $100,000. That was mind numbing, right? That was crazy, right? But we could also watch a game show like Jeopardy or like Wheel of Fortune because we like to solve the puzzles. We like to play along, right? These were games we got to play along with, and that was enough for us. Right, I remember Wheel of Fortune when they would go through and they would pick prizes. I'll take those golf clubs. I'll take that dining room set.
Yeah, where you go shopping with the money that you won, right?
Yeah, and your little face was like floating in the corner as they were like showing all the prizes. Like it was hilarious and kind of creepy.
Yeah, right.
but as soon as you step up, what's on the table? Right now we're playing for $1 million. And you're like, here you go. You've got a chance to win this, that, or a new car. People are like, a new car? And a Mini Cooper at that. It's not like we were giving away a Cybertruck, right? We were giving away a Mini Cooper. So the stakes aren't there. So I think when you launch these new shows, I think you have to launch them in the vein of there's got to be either it's a game we love to play or there's enough risk there, right? And that's where you see like The Wall, the Floor, all these shows where it's like you can or you can't. You're risking how much money are you going to risk to win or lose, right? That's now the thing. But all these prices are through the roof, right? And it's funny too because if you watch like The Wall, I watched The Wall for a while when it was on. And I really liked it. And there was always the chance of like, you could win up to $2 million. And these people always walked out of there with like $30,000, $40,000, right? Because they kept risking it. You're there, like, right? Why not go for the big money? A lot of these reboots are just, I don't know. The risk doesn't seem to be there. And for some reason, playing like bumper stumpers where you're trying to figure out what a license plate says isn't as fun as it used to be. Classic Concentration. I mean, I used to love Classic Concentration just because I love the concept of looking at a board and trying to figure out what that board says. But the other thing, too, is like most of these people are playing all these game shows on their phone all day long anyway. So by the time they go home and watch it, they've already played it themselves.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
So,
true. That's true. Yeah, they take a lot of these games and boil them down to these formats that you could play in 30 seconds. Who's going to sit there and watch, and it's unfortunate because I Concentration is one of my favorite shows, but would that exist in the TV landscape today? I don't know. I don't know that there's space for somebody to sit and watch a static image of a puzzle for half an hour. That seems like a tall order these days.
right. I mean, we obviously have way more at our fingertips. We can any game we want to play, we can play. I mean, I love to play that game on the New York Times.
Oh, Wordle.
I like Wordle, and then there's another game in that set that I like. But like I wait every day. I just play it the once a day. But I know I have so many friends that started off with Wordle, but now they've downloaded the app so they can play it all day long. And like that's the thing, right? So like when you originally watched Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy or whatever, the only time you got to play Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy or any of these games, Classic Concentration, Bumper Suppers, is when they were on TV, and then you would watch them, and then later they kind of came out with the board game, and so occasionally you would get together with your family, right? It wasn't like every time you went to the bathroom you pulled up, you can pull up Wordle, you can pull up Classic Concentration, you can pull up anything, right? All those games exist at your fingertips. So, and then now we're talking about, you could win $10,000. All of a sudden $10,000 isn't a lot of money, and so I think that's going to forever be the hard part about launching those games. And now we also have so many primetime game shows. Keep in mind, there weren't many, if any, back in the day, primetime game shows. So now all those primetime game shows can just go into syndication. So you don't need the 170 episode Scrabble or whatever, right? You got to come up with something. It's got to be, I think these days it's got to be fresh. It's got to be exciting. It's got to be new. It's got to be something that people like to, they want to see, they want to watch. But more importantly, they want to play.
Yeah, that aspect is the most important. I mean, that's where Wheel of Fortune, I think, has its greatest success. If you're walking by a TV that's showing Wheel of Fortune and you see that puzzle, you are now a participant. You're looking at it, and something about the human brain. I don't know if you're the same way, Rossi, but like if I look at a puzzle on the Wheel of Fortune, like I'm going to sit there and figure out what it is. Like my brain just wants to solve it.
100%. I've literally been flipping through channels or something, and you go past it, you see the puzzle, you're like, ooh, what is that? And if you know it, great. And if you don't, you sit there until you figure it out. See, there's a competition level to game shows, right? Can I answer it quicker than the person that's on TV? Right. And that's the fun part about it. That's the fun part about Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, things like that. That was kind of fun. Knockout or knockoff, Fame game. Like those were fun. The speed rounds are the speed rounds, right? I mean, you can play along, obviously, but the Fame game stuff where you look at the board, trying to figure it out. Ooh, is it this? Is it that? Am I right? Am I wrong? Like that stuff, it's fun. People
right.
enjoy it.
Yeah, right. Are you going to guess it before they guess it? Sure. Yeah, I've talked to, and you're actually the 100th interview I've done, so thank you for that honor. But I've talked to, this is number 100. Yeah, I started this in 2022. You're number 100.
That's great.
Thank you. I've talked to a lot of contestants, and one of the things that we talk about when it comes to game shows is the aspirational nature that some of the great game shows are great and relatable and fun to watch because you can see yourself there.
Right. I mean, that's every time I ever saw a game show or wanted to watch a game show, it was twofold for me, right? I loved the game, but I had a chance to make life-changing money, right? When you're watching as a kid, $20,000, $30,000, especially in the 80s, whatever.
Oh yeah, that's the dream. Yeah.
Right. This was huge money. I think now it's kind of like it almost seems, some people, you see it like people come on these shows, it's like, they need this, they need that, they're on their, having a tough time, and I think a lot of game shows are now looking for the story, right? They look for that sport, especially the primetime ones. You want the story of that you root for the person, you want them to win, right? And so but again, is that does that still happen? Right, in a world today where we love the voice, but we're rooting for the celebrities, right? It's like we don't even root for the singer anymore, right? We cheer for the judges.
Sure.
Right. So the landscape itself has just changed. The daytime game show concept. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember the last time I was home during the day just watching TV. But I don't even know what game shows are on these days during the day.
The big ones, we got Price is Right, Let's Make a Deal. Those are the two big ones, I think. But yeah, not much on daytime otherwise.
And those are still fun games, right? Those are still fun games. They've got multiple games. Let's make a deal. You're going to pick the box. What box? You pick 3. They pick 2. They get zonked. You're like, I would have won, right? If I was there and that was me, like you said, putting myself back in that position, I would have won the new car. And that's fun. That's fun enough. But at the same time, if I want to watch Let's Make a Deal, I'll Google it or search for it or find it on something, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's always there, whether you're looking for it or not, or you don't have to be in front of the TV to see things anymore, which is it's a gift and a curse, I think, when it comes to this particular type of TV.
Yeah. For the game show world that we know and grew up with, it's different. There was nothing better for me as a kid on a sick day, because that's the only time I ever got to see these shows. Right? I didn't get to see these game shows unless I was sick. And so those days were, man, I would just 7 hours of game shows was just, I would always get super bummed when it would kick over from game show to talk show, right? And you're like, bummer, right? And then it was video games or whatever.
Which in 2007, I feel like that's part of what was happening on TV around the time Temptation was on. There were so many talk shows, so many courtroom shows. Like, those options are just beginning to blossom. Like, there are so many other choices, and it's unfortunate that Temptation, I think, kind of got lost in the shuffle. Once you do your season, once you record the season, are you aware of the ratings? Do they make you aware? Are you tracking them? Like, how do you keep tabs on how well your show is doing?
I was, for sure, because this was my dream come true, right? So I was a big part of it. So what happens, especially when you go into when you want to go into where, like, we didn't air on Fox, right? So they sold it into syndication.
Right.
So syndication, we were on Fox, we were on My TV 13, which was the CW, etc. Right. So we were on multiple channels, right? Depending on
different cities, different parts of the day,
different markets. And so, like, I met with the sales team, and they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to go hit this market. So, like, there's certain markets you had to get, right? You had to get some of the New York, San Francisco, right? You had to get some of the big markets, and then you had to get a certain amount of little markets, and whatever that number was, I don't know what the number was, but you had to get a certain amount of, it's almost like delegates in the presidential election, right? You needed a certain amount of markets that added up to a certain number to make it nationwide, to where then it got picked up. Right. So even after our show, we shot the show, we had to go sell it. And so there was this team that went and sell it. And if it gets sold into enough markets and it builds big enough, then it has to get at least a 1 rating to kind of keep moving. And then it maybe moves into bigger markets. But it's not necessarily in every single market. So you have to sell it into enough markets. So I was in touch with the sales team. There were certain people I would do calls with them. They'd be like, hey, we got a thing with Dallas tomorrow. We want you to call in and talk to these guys and, whatever. So I was a part of that as much as I could be. And then I'm in touch with the executive producers and Fremantle at the time, because Fremantle was also trying to sell it. Right. So we were a team, right? Because it was like me and it was like me, the executive producer at Fremantle, the executive producer of the show, and then the main game component guy, and then the main marketing guy. The 5 of us flew to Australia, flew to Melbourne, and did the whole thing. So from that moment, right, and they were in all the auditions. So it was kind of like we were the group, right? And so we were together the entire time, from shooting the pilot, getting it signed off, getting it picked up, then getting it sold into syndication, like all those things. So I was just very much a part of that group. It was kind of like, what do you need from me to make this happen? And they were as excited to report back. Oh, Rossi, we just sold into this market, this market, this market. Like it was like, oh, awesome, because we all wanted it to do it again, right? We wanted it to do well, and we wanted it to get picked up, and we wanted to do it again because we loved it. We had a blast, and we were close, and we were friends, and it was like this is something. It was kind of our pet project together. We all were in on this. So at that point, I was just very much a part of the process.
Right. And you develop that camaraderie, I guess, because, you're selling this product, you're hitting the bricks, and, that will bring people together. And, it will bolster the faith that you have in your product too. I'm sure you had that feeling selling this show that like, this is great. You had to have been so proud of the work that you all did. And you even to this day sound very proud of this show.
I am, again, because it's not, listen, I did one, right? So it's not easy to become a game show host. I've hosted a lot of shows, and that's the one true game show, syndicated nationwide game show I've ever hosted. So I'm very, very proud of that. And listen, if I had the opportunity to do it again, I would do it in a heartbeat. Because I loved it. I still have the energy. I'm still good at this kind of stuff, right? This is still me. I am still this person. But at the same time, it's not easy. It wasn't easy to get the pilot shot. It wasn't easy for it to get picked up. It wasn't easy to shoot all the seasons. And then it wasn't easy to shoot into syndication. And then we only lasted one season, right? It's just not like this industry. You're just built for failure. You just are. And so going through all the steps that we did, getting that done, shooting 172 episodes in that short of time. That will forever be something I'll hold very dear to me and a feather in my cap. Like I was very grateful that I got to do it. And then just proud of myself of how I did it, how I handled it, and what I brought to that set and those people, and the other thing too is you got to keep in mind, I've shot more episodes of that show than American Idol. There's so many shows that have still not shot 170 episodes of something.
Right. That's a big run.
Yeah, like Seinfeld, Friends. No, they didn't have 170 episodes of those shows.
Yeah. It's something to be proud of.
They're running 20, whatever, 10 years, 30 episodes a season. Okay, well, 300. Or, that's not 300. But however many they did, it didn't, my math is obviously horrific. But it was so funny because we actually, one day on our 100th episode, 150th episode, they set up the game for me to do like the fame game. And the fame game was how many series have had this many more episodes. And I was shocked at the time. Like we outdid all these shows, like you would think like, oh man, of course, like Seinfeld, like of course, right? American Idol at the time, like of course. And they had not shot that many episodes because they were prime time. They were only doing 20 episodes or whatever it is in a season. And it only been on 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is. And we won. And it was like, oh wow, like that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of episodes and of consistent quality too. They are all as good as each other. It's an excellent run. I added a question to my list that I thought of asking around the time you had emailed me about an hour or so ago. So you told me that your daughter had gotten sick, and having kids is always a sort of equalizer when it comes to your time. The best laid plans. Kids will come in and randomize all of that. And I wonder if you have any insight into this. What happens, for example, when the host of a show, their kid gets sick at school? What happens in those circumstances? Like what happens when, in another industry, if something happens that you would call out for? Like I work in hospitality. If something happened here at home, I might have to go home for the day. Someone might have to cover for me. What happens in that industry when something comes up that you can't control?
Well, you're more prepared for it, right? So when I shoot those shows or when I'm on set, my wife is locked in and prepared for anything, right? And it's kind of unfortunately understood. If anything that she has or anything that comes up, it's kind of on her, right? And so you plan around it for that, but again, because it's for a short amount of time, and so you have to have that partner that is on board for that, right? That's there for you. Like, okay, like I know this is your time. I know this is when you're locked and trapped, and there's no matter what happens, there's nothing you can do about it. So like I've got you, right? And we would, we'd keep her sister on kind of alert. We had a couple like of our close friends like on alert, like, hey, if anything goes down, it was funny because you actually move through those times where like, honey, I'm gone today because I've got this, right? She decides, oh, I'm going to do this today. So she makes sure she's got two friends. Hey guys, I'm going to go do this, and this. If something happens with our daughter or whatever, are you guys available? Yes. Right. So you kind of actually you plan it.
So you have that support system in place. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. You have to. Where today, right, I was going to get up, I was going to do breakfast, I was going to come do this interview. It's like, and so my wife had some other stuff going on, and she was doing this, and the next thing you know, kid wakes up throwing up or at last night, and then it's just like, okay, it's like, what can you do? What can I do? And then you just kind of start trying to figure it out. And like, unfortunately with this, some things kind of skip my mind because that's my first priority. But I will tell you, I haven't been in that situation with kids. Like the things I shoot now, it's like I go out of town to shoot them. So like I did a show in May and I was gone for 2 weeks. So like 2 weeks I was out of town. Well, there's nothing I can do when I'm out of town. So like my wife's got it. So she makes sure her support system is in ready to go. I can't remember the last time I actually shot a program in Los Angeles.
That's great to have a job that takes you all over the place like that. I mean, that's wonderful. And then, thinking about what you just said, right? When you talk about how you were going to do A, B, and C, then something comes in and you have to restructure your plans on the fly. I mean, those are game show host skills at work in everyday life. Because you go to host a game show, and again, you don't know what's going to happen in the game. You don't know if somebody's going to win $1 million. You don't know if they're going to lose on the first question. You don't know if there's going to be a tie. You don't know what's going to happen. But being able to reconfigure what you have in your brain to correspond to what's happening out on the floor, that's like an essential game show host skill. So it's just very interesting to me that can come into play not only on a game show set, but also at home where you're getting ready to make breakfast. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and again, and that's part of it. I mean, there's definitely something about me thinking on my feet. But again, it's never failed. And even shooting that game show, I made a few mistakes. I had to go right from I'm from Arkansas, so I sometimes mumble. All right, I kind of have I can get lazy with my talk, being Southern, kind of having that draw, like that happens. So like before I shot, I had to go to like a linguist to help me to make sure that I could when I was doing these speed rounds, I would say these words very clear and very fast. And because when they first kind of tested me, I had some words I would run together with other words,
right,
depending on the structure. And so I went to this linguist, and she had to help me find words, like read through the questions, find the words that might be difficult or I might linger on, underline them, make sure when I went through that when I was flipping the cards right real quick because they're in front of me, that I had underlined or made notes on words I needed to hit, or make sure that I pronounced well, right? You have to enunciate because you get going real fast, and it's a speed round, so you're trying to get through as many questions as you can. And as a Southern guy trying to speak really, really fast, which I do naturally, but I still kind of mumble occasionally, just sometimes. I went to, they trained me. They sent me to a linguist to learn how to, like someone that taught accents. And basically she was essentially teaching me how to do an American accent, even though I'm clearly American, but I'm just from Arkansas. So I have a little bit of a draw.
Right, she was just how to do it in that way that's
typical American.
Yeah, like culture neutral.
Very much.
Yeah,
very much. And that's one of the big things. Like when you're doing like game shows, like you can't be too much of anything, You can't be too Southern. You can't be too proper. You can't be too flamboyant. You can't be too street. You can't be too anything. You have to be very middle of the road so that everyone can understand what you're saying.
It's a science. It is an absolute science when it comes to, well, I'm sure when it comes to casting as well. I mean, you have a career in casting as well as on camera work. What and I'm sure it depends on the kind of show, but is there any sort of blanket criteria that a casting agent might look for, whether it's for whether it's for a contestant, whether it's for a host? Is there a certain type of person, or is there a certain quality that casting people look for?
Big loud energy. Nobody wants to bring the quiet cat lady to a game show. You know what I mean? Like they want big energy, and it, depending on the show, and you've seen enough reality TV now. Half these people are like crazy people, right? They're crazy people when you're talking about these dating shows and Love Islands and, Love in the Air, whatever it is, right? They want people that are out there and going to give you something to talk about. When it comes to your classic game shows, like the contestants, 3 contestants, whatever, I would say outside of Jeopardy, right? When you're talking about strictly, it doesn't take any specific talent to be on the show. You're just looking for, it's a fun game to play. You're looking for people with energy and personality, just personality. That's it.
It's as simple as that. If you're watching, well, I'm sure there's a lot more to it, but at the end of the day, I think you're right. If you can relate to the person on TV, there's that connection right there. You're going to watch the show.
Well, yeah, if you're not having fun on the show, I'm definitely not having fun watching the show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So, yeah, you want to, it leads with your host. But the contestant, I mean, think about some of the great contestants from back in the day that you just oddly remember from watching certain shows. And, it's like you just remember them. They have a quality about them that's as contagious as the host, to be honest. Right? They do something, they say something, they're funny, they're big, they're loud, they're flamboyant, they're whatever. So as a contestant, you can be whatever. Right? You get to be the difference for that show than the host. Right? The host is kind of what the host is, and then the contestants get to be whatever.
That's so true. And then if you have a good host, that host can pull it out of you, whatever it is. If it's not immediately apparent, they can make you the star for those few minutes if you're, sure. If you don't come with it.
But there's got to be a certain level of energy and personality that you have naturally that you start with.
Tell Us About Yourself. Conversations with Game Show Contestants is hosted, produced, and edited by me, Christian Carrion, from my studio in beautiful downtown Lancaster City, Pennsylvania. Co-executive producer Cory Anotado. Researcher Chuck Donegan. This has been a production of BuzzerBlog, the most popular game show website in the world, in partnership with the National Archives of Game Show History at the Strong National Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. For more information, visit museumofplay.org. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Christian Carrion. Good night. Tell Us About Yourself is sponsored by bonusround.ca, streaming Canada's classic game shows on demand. Dive into the golden age of television with thousands of episodes of Canadian series that defined an era from anywhere in the world, all for just $1.99 a month. From iconic shows like Let's Make a Deal and Definition to cult classics like Bumper Stumpers and The Mad Dash, bonusround.ca brings you timeless entertainment that's fun, enlightening, and affordable. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, relive the magic of Canadian television history. Subscribe now at bonusround.ca for $1.99 and turn every night into Game Show Night. By Game Show Forensics, Join host Robert McKee and his crack team of forensic game show scientists as they take you on the deepest dives imaginable in a quest to analyze the most detailed minutia of game shows nobody else dares to, or cares to, investigate. Nothing is too whimsical for examination, no semantics too absurd for the research extremists at GameShowForensics.com. Parental discretion is advised. And by The Inn at Leola Village. Nestled in the heart of picturesque Pennsylvania, the Inn at Leola Village is a sanctuary of luxury and relaxation. Indulge in the timeless beauty of their historic suites, each meticulously designed to transport you to a bygone era of elegance and grace. Experience the culinary delights of their award-winning Italian restaurant, where every dish is a masterpiece crafted from the finest local ingredients. From romantic getaways to corporate retreats, the Inn at Leola Village offers a haven for every occasion.
I've never created
Unwind at the spa,
so
stroll through the lush gardens, and let the stress of everyday life melt away.
Thank you to everyone.
Make your reservation today at theinnatleolavillage.com or call the front desk at area code 717-656-7002. The Inn at Leola Village, an oasis of luxury.
Kind of maintaining the numbers on the back end so that I don't have to. Thank you to everyone at BuzzerBlog. Thank you to everyone at the Strong Museum, Chris, Shane, Bob Bowden, Howard Blumenthal, National Archives of Game Show History. Thank you to everyone who reads BuzzerBlog, and again, everyone who downloads and listens to the episodes each week and leaves comments and just gives me so much love for this thing. I love you too. Enjoy.